So my portion of the project, I sort of did a lot of the concept designing like the rest of the guys did. We all put into it a lot of thought, and here you can see me sketching out ideas. And what I ended up coming up with was I wanted to do the ascension towards acceptance, which is the last stage of grief. And originally the planning for this was sort of difficult. We wanted to make it a metaphor for moving upwards, so we weren't sure whether to choose a tower or maybe a building, try and base it more in reality. But we ended up going with a sort of surreal look for the whole game, which I originally was not fond of, but then as I started working with the project, I fell in love sort of with the design that I had for the tower that I was going for. I sort of I used a lot of cylinders, thinking of like sort of a holy aspect, thinking columns and cathedrals, but also there's sort of this dystopian sort of feel to it, I believe. And while this isn't completely intentional, I think it came out portraying the message really well, and I was overall very happy with the look of the level that I created and the ideas that I came up with to help the project.
My name is Dylan Landry, and I worked on my final project with Ted Scontris and Joseph Sirocco. Um, for our project, we made a game world in Unity using the Oculus Rift, and we're going for immersion and trying to somehow model the 5 stages of grief in a game so that when someone does go through the 5 stages of grief, they can sort of recognize and work back to our game and build identify why they might be feeling what they're feeling and how to maybe overcome it and pass through the process easier. Um, in this view here, you can sort of see exactly how we split up the project. I took care of this first segment here, while Joseph took care of this segment and the second one here. Well, I took care of the fourth segment, which is sort of this multi-level section right here, this trapezoid and that lower trapezoid, which then moves into Ted's section, which is this big, big tower that leads up to a plane, which is the finish. Sort of a recurring theme in my project had to do with linear lines and things being neat. Right here, the character spawns here. We're supposed to model isolation and denial. When you spawned here, you were completely alone in this open space with only a tower to look at that you obviously could not reach, and you were guarded within this space. The lights pointed towards you towards a wall, and you'd sort of search between you and this wall over and over and over again, sort of in a state of denial, thinking that even though there was a wall there, you would still try to move forward and sort of ignore what other possibilities might lie around. The solution to the puzzle is to move backwards, back down into the hole to overcome the sense of denial and move into a new area, which was Joseph's section there. The fourth section here, which is mine, was sort of something you'd enter through this front gate. Inside was a series of red lights pointing you towards another series of red lights and a drop. This was sort of this to model the transition into depression. The red lights symbolizing sort of a tragic sort of unsteadiness in your life, and the red lights up ahead sort of to signify a negative event that was going to happen, and the fact that you couldn't really avoid it. You just had to sort of drop down to the next level to move on. That you kind of just had to have the feelings flow over you. Once you got to the next trapezoid, it was very, very dark. And the only thing you could see were these 2 white lights which led to the exit, showing that sort of after the event, even though it might be so dark you can't see anything, there still is a solution to the issue. You just have to look hard and sort of follow your gut through.
Okay, so Joseph Sirocco here. This is my final project. It's called Kubler-Ross, and the project is sort of a representation of the 5 stages of grief, hopefully helping the user to work through it. I worked in this project with Ted Scontris and Dylan Landry, and my part of the project was I designed 2 of the stages. I designed the anger stage and the bargaining stage. And despite the fact that this says bargaining right here up on the top, this is the anger stage. And the anger stage was a hedge maze that I made. I individually textured all the bushes and designed all the lighting and everything like that. And the thought behind it is there are sort of two halves to this hedge maze. There's the half on the left here, which is more well lit and evenly lit, and the half on the right, which is barely lit at all, save for a few dots. And the way to solve each of the stages is to sort of do the opposite of the stage of grief that you're on. So for anger, what you'd have to do is calm down and sort of trust yourself. So initially, the player heading down the path to this sort of very obvious exit here, which is not the actual exit, they would get there and see it's not the right way to go. So they would turn around and head back to the first light that they would see when coming down the tunnel here. And they'd sort of wander around this maze for a while, and there is no exit there. So they would get upset, and they would probably head back to the main path after a while. And they would head over to this next area, which is almost completely dark. They would sort of have to trust themselves and follow the lights. If they followed the lights, they actually found the correct path to this very intimidating tree over here. And behind the tree, actually, is the solution and the way to move on to the next stage, which is bargaining, also the other stage I designed. The player can actually move right through the tree into the tunnel to the next stage. So in order for them to solve anger and move on through that stage, they had to have calmed down and sought out the path, even if it was not the most obvious one. And bargaining, which is not on screen right now, but it is basically a church, a very small church that has crosses and the ceiling is a painting, much like the one in the Florence Cathedral. And the idea behind bargaining was a lot more focused and less general than the other ideas, which are just representations of the stage of grief. Bargaining was very specific. Oftentimes, when people reach this stage, one of their main methods of bargaining is with God or their God or any religious deity. Bargaining for them to bring them back, or praying that they could have done something, or something could have happened differently. In order to move on through this stage, you just sort of have to move past all the religious symbols that I put in the stage, and move towards the end, and eventually stand upon this sort of lit stage that is different from all the other lit stages which contain crosses. And this one, it's empty. It has you on it when you get to it, and it allows you to proceed on to the next stage of grief. The idea behind that was sort of just to symbolize that you have to accept that no one can bring whatever was lost back, and ultimately moving on through grief lies with you and you alone. Other people can help you, but the ultimate decision is up to you. So yeah, as a group, Ted, Dylan, and I were very good. We all did in almost a completely equal share of work. I actually can't think of anything that happened or went wrong with this group. And our project did use the Oculus Rift, which is why I'm not playing it, because I cannot record the inside of an Oculus Rift screen. So all in all, I think the project went very well. We also did a lot of collaboration on the scenes together. It wasn't completely disconnected. We always got together and talked about what each stage was going to be. So this wasn't just my idea alone. It was Ted and Dylan's as well. We really worked together on it. So I suppose that's all that to say. The project, once again, is called Kubler-Ross.